Hello, this is Anna Imagination with shifting perspectives from the healing garden. How much do I have to say today? I am talking about the impact and the depth that perspective abuse has on every single one of us. It's extraordinary. And the more I delve into this work, the more it's just mind blowing at really how much perspective abuse has gone on to shape each and every one of us, encompasses our society, and really magnifies, defines the problem. If you've recently listened to my videos, any of my videos, you'll notice that I've started talking in terminology of perspectives. I talk in various numbers like twos, threes, fours, fives, six, sevens, and eights. And I am referring to ethical perspectives that are outlined, introduced in the 1970s by Dr. Graves' work. And then this is all I do. This is my encompassing life work, is perspective psychology. Perspective psychology revolves around the theory, although I'm really, really adamant that it's the more I do this, the more I'm looking at it going, this is not theory. This is how our minds are. A person, Dr. Graves presented in the 1970s that a person evolves through 8 different levels of perspectives. Now, most people get to levels to ethical perspectives, threes, fours, and fives, and they shut down. They don't proceed to grow. That is based off of, this is my theory, is that it's based off of the work that a person either prioritizes a comfort zone or they prioritize growth. Once you prioritize a comfort zone and you get to level 3, 4, or 5, you're good. It's like you have no motivation at all to proceed past that because you've reached your aligned perspective. And cats are being cats. You have reached your aligned perspective, and you have also decided that comfort zone is more important to you than growth. So we see a lot of people, the majority of people, reaching perspectives level 3, 4, and 5, and then just stalling out. But that's not how it is for everybody else. That's just one type of person. So when you look into perspective thinking, and that's really what I'm introducing here. I have to write when I talk so I can keep track of what I'm saying. So let me get my notes up here. When you have perspective theory, there are 2 determining factors. The first one is, what is your ethical perspective? And the next one that we look at is, what is your priority? Is it comfort zone or is it growth? Now, comfort zones is basically where you seek soothing, it's where you seek reassurance, it's where you get your security from. It is supposed to be temporary. It is not supposed to be a place where we permanently sit. I want you to imagine our first comfort zone is our mother. And for most of us, this is true. Our very first comfort zone is our mother. And think about a toddler. When the toddler is sitting with the mother and it decides to go off and explore, that is when it enters the adventure or the growth mode. I like to call that the growth zone or the adventure zone. And past the adventure and the growth zone is the unknown and the dark abyss that is fear. And I'm going to refer to that as the dark abyss because that sounds epic. The dark abyss. Yes, 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 the dark abyss. So you have the mother, the adventure growth zone, and then the dark abyss. And when you have a child, that toddler will venture away from the mother, the comfort zone, and wander into the growth zone, have a massive adventure. But if the child wanders too far, it locates the edge of the dark abyss and it runs back to the mother because, first of all, the dark abyss scared the crap out of the child. And second of all, it required reassurance, security, safety, and soothing, which is located at the comfort zone, the mother. Now, as the child ventures out and explores, that's the age of exploration, that's with the adventure, and then they further and further into the dark abyss, that growth zone expands and it branches out into the dark abyss. If you are a gamer, if you've ever played a video game, an RPG, where you are exploring a new map in a new world and you see the map is this, and then as you explore, the map gets bigger and bigger. The dark abyss is the unknown shady parts of the map. It is the elephant graveyard in Lion King. That is the dark abyss. And inside, I love Lion King, by the way. There's a lot of life metaphors I use for the Lion King. Oh my God, do I? So I'm going to do like a whole Lion King evaluation on how perspective thinking applies to Lion King. Like that's coming up. And oh my God, I'm going to have so much fun tearing that apart. I'm going to show you who, like, I'm excited. I'm excited. That's the Lion King project. So anyway, so you have the dark abyss and you see the map shading in. And basically, as you adventure and you explore, and then you go home and it's oh, I'm back at my home place. I've got my bank, I've got all my stuff and my equipment, and I got my treasure hoard in my basement. And I play Skyrim, so that's what I'm referring. And you get down there and you're in Whiterun and you drop your stuff and you just feel cozy because you're home. That's your comfort zone. So Whiterun, for most of us, if you play Skyrim, is your comfort zone. That's where your wife is. It's where your children is. It's where Stenbar is. Life is good. And then you go back out and you adventure. You're like, okay, I've been home too much. I've sorted and cleaned out everything. I've slept. I've napped. I've restocked. I got to go back on an adventure. And you do. You head back out on an adventure. You walk into the world and you re-explore. You expand more of that map. And now you're adventuring. But then you get into that area where, okay, this doesn't feel good and I can feel like it's going to kick my ass if I go further. Now you've entered the dark abyss. And that's when you turn around, you go back. And sometimes when you're in the dark abyss too long, you really feel stress, you feel anxiety, and you want to go back to that comfort zone. So this is the life of a child. And the more time you spend adventuring, the larger that growth zone gets. But when we are traumatized, when we are abused, then we tend to stay clinging to the mother and we are too afraid to go into our comfort zone. Now, the reason why we are too afraid is because we are not soothing ourselves properly, which is why I have classes on how to soothe fear. Is because people don't know how to soothe themselves. They don't know how to reassure. They don't know how to handle fear. So I have something that I'm going to be creating called fear classes. Fear classes. Fear classes are like, yeah. So fear classes basically teach you the right way to handle fear, the right way to handle anger. And in those classes, you basically learn how to properly soothe and reassure yourself. So you get the security that you require. That way you can go back to your adventure zone and your growth zone and play. By the way, play is where the adventure zone is. Okay, that's absolutely play. For me, I have been living in the dark abyss for 30 years. I am tired of the dark abyss. The dark abyss is my comfort zone because I have been in the dark abyss for so long that it's just like, yep, I'm back in the dark abyss. I actually had to learn how to create my own comfort zone, which is my home, and leave the dark abyss. And I had to untraumatize myself and separate myself from the dark abyss. And there are some people who find comfort in the dark abyss because that's all they know, because it's what you know, what is familiar. So comfort is actually what is familiar. It does not mean it's healthy. It is what is familiar. So when you do healing, trauma healing, what you're really doing is teaching your subconscious mind, not your identity, your subconscious mind, that the dark abyss is not healthy, that the dark abyss is not where you should have a stationed comfort zone. So for me, I moved it to the growth zone. So now my comfort zone is the growth zone. I am very comfortable with my growth zone. That's where I'm happy. And now, now when I get to the dark abyss, I'm just like, you again. And I'm very familiar with it. And it bores me at this point. The dark abyss bores me. So I then venture back and I'm trying to learn how to build a comfort zone. That's my personal mission because that's actually what I've had the least of is a comfort zone, a healthy comfort zone. I need to clarify. So it's learning how to soothe. It's learning how to reassure. It's learning your security. So let's take a look over now at prioritizing comfort over growth. When we have a surplus of fear, we prioritize comfort. Once we establish our comfort, once we're soothed and reassured, then we can very easily open up and accept the growth zone. And we're supposed to toggle between the two of them, much like a video game when we're wandering through all the different levels. You really don't want to be in the dark abyss. And if you get to the dark abyss, you really shouldn't be more than just on the edge. You should be observing the dark abyss. You should be at the edge of the map. It's that moment in Skyrim when you get to the assassins, the first time you arrive at the assassin's hovel And you're going, okay, that's the dark abyss. What's in there? And you have to go through the creepy door that whispers at you. What is it? It's all that crap. That's the dark abyss. That's one stage. And then once you get in there and you learn it, you go, oh, I get what's going on. I'm part of this now. Okay. And you feel it doesn't become comfortable to you every time you walk into there. You might feel on edge. And that's because you're walking through the dark abyss. And then you want to go back to the growth zone, the adventure, but you get back into that hometown. You get back into your home where your mother and your children are, and you just relax because that comfort just comes right back to you. So when you have that surplus of fear, you become overly attached to your comfort zone, and that's when growth stops. So when you have your ethical perspective, people will get to perspective 3, perspective 4, perspective 5, and they will shut down because they prioritize comfort over growth, or they are seeking comfort. They're at their comfort zone, but they don't know how to comfort themselves. So they'll just stay indefinitely in their comfort zone where it's safe. And where it is defined as safe, defined safety has 2 definitions. There are 2 defined safeties, an unhealthy definition and a healthy definition. The unhealthy definition of defined safety is where you can't be hurt, where you can't be abused. That is the defined safety that is unhealthy. It's where there is no abuse. If it is a healthy definition of defined safety, it is actually where you go to soothe and comfort yourself, to eliminate fear. So if you are going to your comfort zone to avoid abuse, that's not healthy. If you are going to your comfort zone because it's safe, that's not healthy. If you are going to your comfort zone because you require soothing and reassurance, that's healthy. But most people use a comfort zone to avoid, especially avoidance. So if you are using your comfort zone as a method to avoid something, you are abusing your comfort zone. That is called comfort zone abuse. Actually, I'm going to say it's misuse, like drug misuse. It is comfort zone misuse. And that is where you start getting locked into your comfort zone and you never leave. That's when you start to prioritize the comfort zone over the growth zone because you just want to be safe. And that's all your brain is hardwired. Be safe, be safe, be safe. So what the only, like all encompassing all abuse comes down to 2 things. You have your ethical perspective. This is your defined center, what you ethically value. And I'm going to get more into that in just a minute. But then we are exposed to a lot of people, parents, cultures, traditions, religions, gods, jobs, co-workers, peers, teachers, religious leaders, traditions, cultures. All of these things are all defined at their own perspective. There is a very small, absolute high intolerance for a difference of perspective. This is rampant. There's a lot of tolerance for children. Children between the ages of 1 through 4 have a lot of tolerance. 1 through 5, that tolerance tends to go away. By the time you are 6, you are expected to conform to everybody else's perspective. It's as if, because it is, an entire people said in one great voice, the right perspective is perspective 4. Everybody must conform to this perspective. This is what we value. This is what the authority is. This is what the identity is. This is what the ethics should be. This is where everyone needs to be. We all must be the same. When children are born, they are born into perspective 1. When they hit 2, they enter into the wonderful world of the terrible 2s. The terrible 2s is perspective 2. Perspective 3 hits with that overly independent toddler who thinks they know best, because that is the independence stage. And then you get to perspective 4, where you prioritize law and order above all else. 4-year-olds love law and order. 4-year-olds are the gods of, yes, law and the rules matter. They're not allowed to break the rules because I'm not allowed to break the rules. And then they stop growing because there's a lot of people walking around with a 4-year-old mentality of that priority of law and order. The self must adhere to law and order. Even if it hurts you, it doesn't matter because you don't matter, because your perspective doesn't matter, because the fourth level perspective, as defined by a 4-year-old, is what matters. And that is law and order is what matters, even if it kills you. But if you're a level 6, this is going to be a problem. If you're a level 8, you're not going to be okay. You're going to suffer significantly. And there's a whole lot of people out there walking around insisting that we all behave as if we adhere to the fourth perspective. So what ends up happening is by the time a child is 3 years old, there's this mentality from our society, from teachers, from parents, all saying, you have to conform, you have to conform, because they associate disorder with children because they don't understand, because they're in the fourth perspective. All they know is the child must behave like them. This is perspective abuse. Now, if the child, by the time the child reaches the age of 4 and 5, by the time the child reaches 6 and 7, according to Freud, it's 4. According to Carl Jung, who I am definitely more solid on following, it's 8 years old. I had my perspective solidified, my ethical perspective solidified at 4 years old. And by the time I was 8, I was advocating for it. So at 4, I remember developing it. I remember the day I shifted into the 6th level perspective. I remember the day. It traumatized me. That's how I remember the day. And then by 8, I was a hardcore advocate for level 6 perspective. And it got me abused severely. It is the core of one of my mental illnesses, one of them. So what ended up happening is when you surpass the overall generic level 4 perspective, everyone who is levels 1 through 4 look up to you and say things like, oh, well, you're crazy. So for a level 4 perspective, anyone who thinks level 5, 6, or 7, it's confusing. They don't understand it because it is impossible to see a perspective higher than your own. So there's a lot of people walking around with a higher perspective, being called crazy, being misunderstood. We see this a lot with mummies and daddies. When mummies and daddies look at their children, adult children, and the adult child says something like, I'm going to start a business. And they open up a business. And that's a level 5 perspective. And the mother and the father are thinking, what are you doing? You have to get a 9-to-5 job. What are you doing? They start calling you lazy. They start calling you unemployed. They start calling you names. They start abusing you because you are a level 5 perspective and they are not there. They're not going to understand it. Good God, this is so common. I was a hippie, very much. And hippie mentality is very much level 6 perspective. So at 4 years old, I developed that level 6 perspective and I was walking around spouting out very much that hippie mindset. But my father, who is a level 4, didn't understand it. So he called me names. He slandered me. He abused me. He literally gave me to my brother to abuse however my brother saw fit as a means to punish me and keep me in check. Perspective abuse. So with perspective abuse, what we end up seeing is basically one message is communicated to our subconscious mind. We receive this information from the abuse, and our subconscious mind immediately goes, oh my God, it is not safe to grow. Holy shit. If you act like level 6 perspective, you're going to be beaten. And I was. So my subconscious mind learned a very clear lesson that perspective 2 from my mother, perspective 3 from my brother, perspective 4 from my father were the safe zones, depending upon who I was with. If I was with my mother, I had to act like a 2. If I was with my brother, you just survive. If you were with my father, I had to act like a 4. So I had to be ready. My subconscious mind had to be ready to adapt to any and all of those circumstances. When I started getting into owners, when I started to get into the slavery that I had, when I started to get into the grooming and the sexual slavery, that was all level 3. Again, you just survive somehow. So I knew that in order to survive them, I had to behave like a level 3 subconsciously in order to keep myself safe. But I was ethically a level 6. So when I saw the abuse and the violence from my third perspective thinking brother, my level 6 perspective, who values animals, went insane. That is when my subconscious mind developed programs to fit all the different perspectives. Those programs are called mental illnesses. Pre-programmed, boxed fittings to make sure that my behavior matches the appropriate, safe perspective, because it's not safe. So that's when I received the message, it's not safe to grow. Depending upon how ethically strong you are, how ethically defined you are, depends on how adamant, how extreme you're going to be with how far you need to go. Some people have been so abused that they can't even tap into their ethical perspective. That is what happens when you are abused completely at level 1. These are the people who go, I have no idea who I am or what I want or where I want to go. That is level 1 mentality, when you are completely dependent upon other people to make decisions for you. It is 0% autonomy. 0% autonomy exists at level 1 perspective. At level 2 perspective, you gain about 5% autonomy. At level 3 perspective, you gain 100% autonomy. It's true. You go from having 0% to 5% to 100% autonomy. But a level 3 perspective, while they have 100% autonomy, they also have 0% empathy. At level 4, you start to learn empathy. And then at level 5, that empathy increases. At level 6, you are full empathy. You have 100% empathy. So stages 1, 2, and 3 are all about learning autonomy. The 4th, 5th, and 6th is all about learning empathy. 6, 7, and 8, you start to learn about ethics. So what happens is by the time you reach perspective level 6, you don't need law and order from a government. You don't need law and order from a religion. You don't need law and order from a tribal or a community leader or a god or your parents or any authority figure. Because at level 6, you are your own authority. You have your own authority. But this is all language that none of us understand. This is all language that is so new because perspective psychology is 1 week old. And as a result, the language does not exist until now. So there's a lot of us running around having no ability to communicate with anybody about what's really going on, because you have to be at level 8 to see this. You have to be at level perspective 8 to communicate it, to understand it. And you required a leader of perspective psychology to invent the language to give it to you. So prior to this, it has not existed. So there's a lot of people wandering around feeling all these things without the vocabulary to communicate any of it. They lack the ability to even understand themselves. So there's a lot of people out there who are level 6, level 7, level 8s. There's not very many level 8s. I have found 1 level 8. And there's this massive communication gap. And there's this massive, it is extraordinary. This other level 8 that I met, he's extraordinary. God, his mind is beautiful. And when I was a level 6 and level 7 and I saw him, I didn't understand him. He was an anomaly to me. There's no other word for it. He was an anomaly to me. And I would just look at him like, you are different. And it wasn't until I entered level 8th perspective that he finally made sense to me. And I finally had clarity and went, oh my God, he was so different because he was a level 8. But he's been living for 10, 20 years now without any of the vocabulary to communicate what it's like being at level 8. He just feels the perspective. He just sees the ethics. He just functions and feels it, and has no words in existence to describe any of it. So he has not been able to understand himself for close to 20 years. Extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I was able to sit down and write it all out and explain all of it and literally hand him the language. And for the first time in 20 years, 10 years, however long it's been, he's able to finally articulate, yes, this is what I am. He now understands himself. It's extraordinary, just absolutely extraordinary. So through definition, definition is the core to comprehension. Absolutely. So it's definition and then comprehension and then acceptance. And that is the status, that is the educational flow that we all must achieve in order to gain knowledge, in order to accept a perspective. Now, the way things are right now, whenever you interact with somebody, we all think we're interacting with one subconscious mind. We all think, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We all think we are interacting with one perspective. That is the common belief out there, that everyone's got their own perspective. No, no, no. Everyone has their own 3 perspectives. That's the truth. We all have 3 perspectives. Our ethical perspective is dangerous to everybody else. It is precious to us. It is known sometimes, not in every case, only to us. And we have learned that when we share our ethical perspective with others, we get abused for it. So our ethical perspective, directly linked to our identity, is sacred, treasured, vulnerable information that will absolutely expose us and destroy us. So it's labeled as dangerous, secret, and we shove it down deep. When we do that, we disconnect from our identity. That is actually how we disconnect from our identity, is we destroy our ethical perspective. So our ethical perspective, from the time we are around 2 and 3 years old, is under fire from our parents, ourselves, our subconscious mind, and everybody around us. Now, likewise, our subconscious mind has been conditioned to adapt to whatever abusive programming we received to fit into whatever perspective other people wanted of us, mainly our parents. So our parents wanted us to be like them in the name of being the same. We were abused to fit a perspective 2, 3, or 4. Now, when I talk perspectives, there's going to be a lot of people who notice that I never refer to anything higher than 2, 3, or 4. I specifically say 2, 3, or 4. And the reason why is because by the time you get to 5, you stop bossing people around for the most part. Now, 5s can drop down to 3s, and that's when they become telling other people what their perspective should be. But by the time you get to perspective 5, you develop a single ethic. Oh, I don't have the right to tell other people what they should do. At perspective 5, you adopt the ethic, I shouldn't tell other people what they should do. So there's very little abuse that takes place from perspective 5s. But we have a higher function and a lower function. So the higher functions, that's when you wake up and you feel refreshed and you're clear and you can think and you're focused and you feel great and you feel aligned with your ethic and life is great. But when you're hangry, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you are traumatized, when you are drinking alcohol, you drop 2 perspectives. That is your lower function. Usually for me, it hits around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I am fantastic when I wake up at 5 a.m. But by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I feel myself dropping to that lower perspective. So I go from an 8, where I am right now, and by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this afternoon, I'm going to be dragging it at a 6. That's when I get cocky. That's when I get arrogant. That's when I start to get condescending. That's level 6. Level 6s are very condescending. Sorry, I'm working on it. Level 5s drop to level 3s. So you'll see level 5s going from, I shouldn't tell people what to do. And then they have some alcohol and then they say, you know what you should do? All narcissists are level 3s. All narcissists, all of them. Their low function is level 3, vulnerable narcissist. Watch this. Watch this. There are 2 types of narcissists. I don't go by all the gibberish that's out there in psychology because all of that gibberish in psychology comes from level 4 thinking. It's governed by level 4 thinking. A level 4 perspective, when you're working with psychology at level 8 with perspective psychology, you see things that level 4s can't see because they're not there yet. So when I look at psychology, it's like looking at a 5-year-old trying to tell you how to write a book. So I don't listen to a lot of the psychology that's out there. I throw a lot of it away. In fact, Dr. Graves, who was either at a 7 or an 8, presented this work in the 1950s and 1970s, and all the level 4 psychologists went, "Oh, isn't that nice?" And they shelved it because they're level 4s. So I take a lot from psychology that I go, "Isn't that nice?" And I set it aside. That being said, there are two kinds of narcissists. Two. They are narcissists who use narcissism. No, they don't use it. I need to find, again, creating the language as we speak. Give me a minute. It is a trigger, like a PTSD trigger. A person with PTSD doesn't walk around choosing their PTSD. It's a trigger response. A narcissist is no different. It's their programmed trigger response. A narcissist is somebody who is taught that level 3 is safe. Now, there's two kinds. There is the I am a level 3, my subconscious mind is a level 3, and I am an ethical level 3. These are the dangerous, grandiose narcissists. These are the narcissists who are always narcissists no matter what. This is their aligned programming. They are independent to the expense of all others. They have autonomy without ethics. They prioritize their autonomy and their independence above everybody else at any expense, no matter what. Level 3 perspective. Now, if you are an ethical 3 and you are a subconscious mind 3, you are going to be permanently stationed at narcissism. Let's flip that around. If you are a level 5, then you are going to drop down to a level 3 on your lower function. This is the narcissist that flips the switch on and off. When they're rested, when they don't feel threatened, when they feel fantastic, they are functioning at a level 5 perspective, where I shouldn't tell other people what to do. My brother is this way. He is a level 5 when he's high function. But when he drops down to his lower function, when he feels stressed, when he feels triggered, when he feels threatened, he switches over to a level 3. Now, when you switch over to a level 3, it doesn't mean you're going to be aggressive. It doesn't mean you're going to be a narcissist. There are several types of level 3s. There are empath level 3s. There are narcissist level 3s. There are avoidant level 3s. Level 3 just means you're highly independent to the point where you don't ask for help. So for a hermit, that could be somebody who just crawls into a corner and goes silent. All level 3s are isolated. All level 3s are isolated. All level 3s are a type of hermit. You either go, and it depends on your coping style. It depends on how you handle anger. If you get into that independent stage, you're hyper independent, it's hyper independence. When you get into your hyper independence, you shut down and you go into a corner and you don't exist, you withdraw. That's avoidance. That's their coping style. And then there's the, I can't do this, I'm a controller, I have got to get out of this hellhole. And they will sit down and they will study and they will do everything in their power to get out of level 3. That's where I fell. And then the level 3, the other one, is they are angry and they don't know how to communicate, so they turn to violence. And because they turn to violence, they become aggressive, they become dangerous. A level 3 who doesn't handle their anger is dangerous. That is what you're dealing with when you are dealing with a narcissist. Now, not all narcissists are aggressive. Some narcissists like to use verbal violence. Verbal violence. That is a word we need in our culture. Verbal violence. I have a YouTube playlist referred to as Learn the Lingo. And I recommend you take a look at it. It really, really encompasses a lot of this language. So verbal violence is one of those things where I will be talking about. We think violence is aggression, or we think It's physical, and it's not. Violence and aggression are verbal. It can be physical. It can be sexual. And I don't like using the word sexual in this case because sex is pure love. So rape has absolutely nothing to do with sex. Rape is absolutely not sex. If you've been raped, you have not had sex. No, 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 no. Rape and sex are two completely different things. But that is, yeah, rape is absolutely about forcing control. So verbal violence. So that's a mother who could be condescending, who constantly tears you down, who constantly calls you names. Name calling is when a perspective of somebody is looking at another perspective and they don't understand them. So they call them lazy, they call them crazy, they call them stupid. It's because you are that person is in a single perspective and they are looking at another perspective higher than them or lower than them. When I say higher and lower, I am not referring to a hierarchy. I am referring to an order, not a hierarchy. Hierarchical thinking is from perspectives 1 through 4. When you get to level 5, when you get to perspective 5, the hierarchy it's still there. You really don't abandon hierarchical thinking until you reach level 7 and 8. 7 and 8 is really, 7 is when you go, oh, there's something else here. You can't quite define it. I could not define it at perspective 7. At 6, there was still a hierarchy. At 7, yeah, you were still there was a difference. Yeah, 7, no, I remember 7. 7 was a solid, I'm better than them because they're in a system and they're prisoners. They're slaves. I'm outside of that. All of my slave talk if you go back on my, when you go back on my videos, there's a period of time where I talk a lot about slavery. That's when I was in perspective level 7. But when you get to perspective level 8, that hierarchical goes away. You realize there was never a hierarchy to begin with. It's just an order, stages. And stages don't mean better than. It doesn't mean higher than or lower than. It's just a progression. That's a really good word. It's a progression. And it's like, imagine there's a parade and you have people who are in the front of the parade and people who are in the back of the parade, but everybody's equal. And you can't make your way through to the end of the parade until you're in the front. You have to start at the front and you have to go in order. And you can only access 3 perspectives at one time unless your subconscious mind is trained to go somewhere else. So you can access and pull from all the perspectives if you were abused in a very particular way, because your subconscious mind is going to pull you back to 2, 3, 4, while your ethics might pull you at 6, 7, 8. Now, I have yet to see somebody. You can be an ethical 8, you can be an ethical 7, but you can't live as ethical 7 and ethical 8 until you resolve your mental illness. It is not possible to live and realize ethical 7 and 8 until you resolve your mental illness. So if you're ethically a level 8 and you have mental illness, you're going to be stuck at 6. You're going to be forced at 6 and 5. And you are going to be forced to function at 4, 5, and 6. But if you're an ethical 8, that's going to cause you a lot of pain, because any time you are reaching out 3 perspectives larger than your actual core ethical perspective, that's where cognitive dissonance comes from. And that causes excruciating pain that then develops into mental illness. Pain creates mental illness. So it goes uncomfort, discomfort. Well, it's comfort zone, and then discomfort, and then pain, and then mental illness. And when you have cognitive dissonance, when you are out of alignment from your core ethical perspective, the greater the distance, the greater the cognitive dissonance, the greater the pain. The greater the pain, the more likely the mental illness. Now you have to start pulling from programming to get you to function from your previous past memory life, 2, 3, or 4, so you can fit in to where you're being forced to live at. The pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of aligning your ethical perspective with your ideal lifestyle. Our ethical lifestyle is determined by our job and career, the people who surround us, and our actions and our behaviors. And our ethical perspective is defined 100% by what we love. So once you know who you are and what you love and where you want to go in life, where you need to live in life, you have a defined ethical perspective, a core that tells you where you should be. But you've got a lot of noise coming in from all of these other people telling you what you should be. And now that noise, all the opinions, all the shoulds, all the abuse, all the guilt, all the fear are being bombarded into your subconscious mind, and they are hijacking your subconscious mind. And now your subconscious mind becomes an agent for your abusers in an attempt to keep you safe. But in order to do that, the subconscious mind requires alignment. So it has two agendas: keep the alignment and keep you safe. And if that means destroying the identity to make sure that the environment and the subconscious mind align, well, then it will do it. Because if the environment and the subconscious mind align, then your pain, that cognitive dissonance, diminishes. But it requires the death of the individual. It requires the death of the identity where the ethical perspective is in order to pull this off. So now you're looking at amnesia. Now you're looking at forgetfulness. Now you're looking at having parts of your personality amputated. Now you're looking at split personality. Anything the subconscious mind can do to get that alignment, to stop the cognitive dissonance, including killing the individual, suicide. It's extraordinary what the subconscious mind will go through to keep you safe and to preserve the alignment. To fix this, definition, comprehension, acceptance. That encompasses conscious awareness. We start there. From there, you need to understand how emotions are, how they work in the system, where their function is, what they're supposed to be used for, and how to manage them. To do that, you really need to start thinking positively, because thoughts and emotions produce a negative and a positive charge. Physics proves this. So that when you are thinking something positive, you are releasing a positive charge. That's why we call it a positive emotion or a positive thought, or think positively, or an optimist, because it produces a positive charge, because it's energy. We subconsciously are hardwired to think either negative or positive. When we are born, we all think positive. Babies are happy for a reason, because they are charged to think positive. Humans come in at 2 and 3 years old and say, that's not a perspective you're allowed to have. You have to have my perspective instead. No, not your perspective. My perspective is the one you have to have. And that's when all the perspective abuse starts, 2, 3, and 4. So that by the time the child is 5, 6, and 7, they are an obedient little conformed number 4. And that's a problem. Now you have pain. Now you have mental illness. Now you have cognitive dissonance. Now you have a child who doesn't understand who they are because they're so busy being everybody else. Perspective thinking really is a game changer in how you handle your mental health, how you handle your pursuit of happiness, and how you decide to start changing things and shifting them around. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. My class begins on August 14th. That is when I will be launching my first round of masterclasses. Take a look at my schedule, www.honesthealinggarden.org. I will be laying out my full schedule, what you can expect, and which classes are best suited to you. You can start by taking the perspective quiz I have on my website. You can figure out what your combination is. That will help you define your ethical perspective, your subconscious mind perspective, and your environmental perspective. Once you have all of the information, the question you really need to be asking is, what is your lifestyle perspective? Now, your lifestyle perspective is the majority of your alignment. It's the average of your alignment. So if you were to take your subconscious mind and your environment, and if they both match, that is your lifestyle. If you take your subconscious mind and your environmental, they're different numbers, and you do an average, that average is your lifestyle. And if that number does not match your ethical perspective, you're in deep shit. You're not going to feel good. You are going to have mental illness. You're going to have misalignment. You're going to have pain. So let's start with getting your combination. Take the quiz. You'll be able to figure out your combination. Once you do, you'll be able to go from there and figure out your lifestyle perspective. Once you have your lifestyle perspective, that tells you where you are, your subconscious mind, where you want to be, your ethical perspective, and then triadic healing shows you how to get there. I break it down for you. And that is, there's a discovery call for you to schedule down at the bottom after you take the quiz. Schedule a call with me and I will sit down and we'll talk about the best way the Healing Garden can work for you. If you are a teacher, I offer this to you for free. Join me on the 14th of August and we'll get you enrolled right away. There is a thing for Triadic Healing for teachers that you can apply for. So if you're a teacher, it's absolutely offered to you for free. So I'm all set here. Always subscribe to my channel here to keep updates and also subscribe to my newsletter at www.anashealinggarden.org. Thank you so much and may the kindest of words always find you.